Say that there is a normal person. She or he sees their family, their mom, their dad, their dog. My perspective of family, I live with my mom and my stepdad. My other brother lives with me. My dad hates my mom. My older brother hates my mom, and I can't see either of them. It's not fair that any family goes through this. It breaks up your family, makes life harder, and you just don't see the world the same.
Every 60 seconds, a child loses contact with one parent permanently because of what's going on in the family court system.
One parent gets to be a parent, and the other gets to be, at best, a visitor, and at worst, completely erased.
It destroys lives, it bankrupts people every day, it tears children from their homes, and just so happens to be a $50 billion a year industry.
It's an epidemic that people don't realize that this country and other countries are going through. Nobody wants to talk about it until it happens to you.
This isn't a father's rights issue. It's not a mother's rights issue. It's a human right issue.
My parents' divorce was so messy that after I graduated from university, I moved literally halfway across the world to Argentina. Anything I could do to get away from them. But divorce and its effects on kids kept following me. And I made a film called Erasing Dad, Borrando Papá, that exposes the discrimination fathers face when they want to be in their kids' lives after divorce. The film's release caused the law in Argentina to be changed so that moms and dads could share joint custody. It also helped me to heal and reconnect with my family, and I returned to the United States. I wanted to make a follow-up film, and after a post on Facebook, my inbox was flooded with desperate pleas for help. Why were all these families reaching out to me, a filmmaker? Why were the family courts unable to help them? I decided to tell the stories of the ignored victims of family court, the children.
I was only 5 years old. One day we're all good, we're all happy, and then the next is like, oh, my dad's no longer in the picture.
I didn't really know what was happening at the time.
My first memory that I have is my parents fighting.
I have more bad memories than good memories.
The day my dad moved out was extremely hard. I was crying all the time.
When I was born, my parents were in the middle of a divorce. So the first time my dad saw me, I was in my grandma's arms in a courtroom. My mom only had one photo. It was a picture of him, and he was holding my sister, Chelsea. A lot of me wanted to have a relationship with my biological father. I remember asking my mom every day, has Dad called, has Dad called? She kept telling me, you know, maybe he's just busy, and then that turned into, he's not your dad. was informed that basically he was poison to me and he would manipulate me if I was ever in contact with him. When I was reading the divorce file, though, there was a lot of things I didn't know happened. There's flaws in the system. I've never known a life where one parent wasn't missing.
I think that as a child, like I kind of knew it was coming subconsciously. You know, there's moments that I have flashbacks where I could see, you know, the door close. I could be standing in the hallway, just hear them screaming, so I just kind of disappear. So when my parents got divorced, I was 12 years old. My father was like, pack your things. We're gonna go, you know, visit your grandma for a little while.
When they left, he pulled him out of school, and I didn't know what to do. I was so overwhelmed with what was going on. I was living up in Pennsylvania because I was in the military. They ended up in Virginia.
Karen, my stepmom, I also call her mom, she came into my life when I was about 14.
Initially, I was there practically every weekend. So the visits started to decrease every month, and then I was stopped. Sometimes it was because the children would call me and say they didn't want to come. Sometimes I would get an email saying, well, the kids don't want to see you this weekend. It was signed by my ex, but it sounded like his wife.
I was just so confused. It really felt like she didn't want anything to do with me.
I can't even really answer why the whole thing happened. I was never on drugs. I had no criminal background. I had no psychological issues other than being heartbroken because I lost my children.
Me and my older brother had a really good relationship most of our lives. And we would play video games together, and everything was normal, like a normal sibling.
My older son always looked up to his father. My ex-husband and I separated, and at that time, my son realized that if he didn't side with his father, likely he wouldn't have his father in his life. So he had to choose mom or dad. And I think it was a survival mechanism, and he chose his father.
It just seems like one day out of the blue, he's just angry at her.
He would come home from their dad's and say I was horrible and demand whatever their dad wanted at the time.
Then he would always say, like, I want to kill her.
That wasn't my son, but he was being so influenced that that's how he had to act towards me.
Oftentimes she just starts crying on my shoulder, but I don't know how to help her.
I get reminded every day, like, your dad sucked.
My dad and my stepmom sat me down and discussed with me how awful of a person my mom was.
I don't think my mom wanted me to have any contact with my father.
Growing up, I learned to hate him.
As I got older, my dad said, you owe your loyalties to me because I've been here for you and your mom hasn't, and your mom left you.
It's a constant reminder because I am my father's child, so.
I began studying parental alienation approximately 3 years ago. I started looking around to people who have been affected by this on Facebook groups and support groups, and I didn't get any answers. I thought it's time to put some serious scientific attention to this problem.
Parental alienation. The set of behaviors that a parent will do to try to distance their child or hurt the relationship between the child and the other parent. Okay, so these...
It can be very subtle. They can refer to the other parent in pronouns, completely undermining their role as a parent. The custodial parent really colors the way that child perceives events. Obviously, you trust and love your parent, and you want to believe that what they're telling you is correct. That child is then expressing and parroting back what they're hearing.
How many of you have had it happen to you? Just by a show of hands. That's about, I'd say about 40%. I ask this of every class that I teach. It's heartbreaking to me to see how many of you are dealing with this.
I was trying to estimate the scope of the problem, and we conducted a poll in order to do that. 13% of these adults reported feeling alienated from one or more of their children, and what that comes out to is over 22 million American adults are feeling like they are being alienated from their children. If there's 22 million adults dealing with this, that's over 22 million children. And the mental health consequences on that child are severe and long-lasting.
I therefore find that X is an alienated child and that he has been alienated from his mother by the words, actions, and behavior of his father. The Child Custody and Access Report found that Brandon was alienated. I knew something was wrong before that. I just hadn't heard of a name for it. The judge did take away Dad's access for a month as sort of a warning because of behavior that was going on. So the judge was really swift in his actions. But the problem is, if one parent wants to make things difficult, it's almost impossible to get things in front of the judge. If they're not turning up for their court dates, if they're hiding from process servers and things, they can drag it on, and the judge can't do anything about that.
I've went to about 4 counselors. The counselor, he asked us to draw a picture of how we felt. I drew a house split in half with Brandon and my dad on one side, and me, my middle brother, and my mom on the other side, and it was just cut in half.
I ended up leaving high school in my second sophomore year and went to beauty school at 15.
See how your layers kind of cascade together now?
My ex and I divorced while she was pregnant with Ashlyn, and then we had a big argument over the phone, and the next morning I was served with a restraining order. This was a permanent order of protection.
Kept everything. It amazes me that I go through all of this, and nowhere in here does she say I'm a bad father. Our divorce is our divorce. What we went through, what she did to me, what I did to her, what our relationship was, has nothing to do with our children.
Honor, I wish it to be known that all I am after is to have unsupervised visitation and joint custody of my daughters. My children are very important to me, and I am very important to them.
This was the worst paper I ever had to file.
He's scared to continue any type of attempt for visitation because of some threat.
I feel it's best to withdraw my petition for visitation.
Although I have not been afforded the opportunity to see my youngest daughter, I love both of my children.
My ex-wife will go to any extreme in her vendetta against me and others. Therefore, I withdraw my petition and pray the situation will change in the future. And I will become a part of my daughter's lives.
It's just hard because you're, reading a letter that your parent feels hopeless.
I lost him.
Here, I don't know when's the last time you've seen this.
Peanut head.
I mean, they're just pictures of his life. Look how cute you were, though. I should give this to you. We had a good 4 years where we were just extremely nasty to each other.
It was almost like this enmeshed situation through divorce where it was like team mom or team family in Virginia. My family started asking me about the divorce and my choice. I felt like my support system was right there in front of me, so it was a pretty simple answer at the time.
You can always look back at a situation and say, oh, I probably could have done this and, been a little nicer about it or welcomed her more, but had better conversations. But no, I think she disappeared on her own.
This is a transcript of when I went to pick my kids up. I rolled down the window, asked Rick if the kids are going to get in the car. And he said, that is up to the kids. They can decide what to do.
No, they do not have to come to the door. They don't, yeah, I think they do. They are old enough that they can express their wishes to you directly, and I can express them to you. I'm not the one who's telling you can't see them, honey. It's not me. It's never been me. It's them. Really? Okay. You ready to go? Sure. All right. Cheerio.
I was calling the police, I called the courts, I called whoever I could think of to help me. And they were like, oh, no, sorry, there's nothing we can help you with. Unless they do something physically harming the children, we can't intervene with this. I just went through all these emails. And this is all the stuff I had to provide to the court. So I was more angry with the courts than I was with what was happening because they wouldn't, it was like, it's almost like the thought that there's no gray area. It's all black and white. It was almost like they were looking to assign blame to somebody rather than figure out a way to make it work for everybody. All I wanted was to have a relationship and be able to see my children. And I felt that there had to be a better way to do this, and what I was experiencing was not it.
I think it was about 8 There was a custody battle that happened.
When the divorce was final, I saw my dad every other weekend.
It was supposed to be 51-49, my dad to my mom. Eventually went to I was only living at my mom's.
My mom hired the most expensive lawyer to make sure that she got sole custody.
The family court system is mandated to work in the best interest of the children. But what actually goes on behind the closed doors of family court?
If you watch any of the law shows, you come in today and you're in court tomorrow. That's not how it works. You're talking usually 6, 8, 12 months down the road. And during that period of time, it's very traumatic for children.
Too many cases, not enough judges. I was responsible for over 1,000 cases. Some days I would have 15, 20 hearings.
That you were in fear of imminent, serious bodily harm. Isn't that true?
Family court really sets the stage for conflict because that is the nature of the legal process. It's adversarial.
If a parent is angry, I want the parent to continue talking, even though what is being said is not relevant. You always have to listen.
Mr. DeHaven, please make sure the questions are clear and don't ask redundant questions.
If you have a parent who has mental health issues, control issues, that person can keep coming back to court. Even if a person cries wolf, wolf 4, 5, 6 times.
In criminal court, the state has to pass certain tests to file charges, but not so in family court. One parent can bring the other parent back to court for something as serious as domestic violence or as petty as not liking the food they feed their child. Family court doesn't have to find a parent guilty of a crime, only that the other parent is the better parent. So evidence standards are much looser in family court than in criminal court.
They are not looking for clear evidence to support or refute either parent's claims, and that's very problematic.
We have a lot of stereotypes that are negative for the fathers. They're more abusive or aggressive than mothers, that they're deadbeat dads.
Would you agree that's a definition?
We have a lot of very positive stereotypes about mothers being the better parent. However, if a mother works, that is often used against those mothers. The other pattern is that the father will make the mother look like she's crazy, and everybody looks crazy in divorce.
While the courts are mandated to work in the best interest of the child, nowhere in the civil code is this term defined. So judges, custody evaluators, and psychologists can make findings based on opinions that they don't have to justify or show scientific evidence to validate.
Approximately $28 billion has been an estimate of how much this costs a year for family court involvement. It's to psychologists who have to get assigned or appointed by the court to make an evaluation. They get paid thousands of dollars. Expert witnesses that parents have to call. It's an industry because all of these pieces play a role.
I've had at least 4 or 5 counselors and doctors, 3 or 4 lawyers. It's cost close to $1 million.
Because it is civil court, you have no right to an attorney. This presents a barrier to families who can't afford to pay for one.
The attorney I had didn't want to do his job because I wasn't able to pay him in full. He could have talked about the parental alienation and said something referring to that, and he didn't say a word because I couldn't pay him.
I had nobody. And on a $600 a month income, can't afford anybody.
How is destroying a parent financially and emotionally in the child's best interest?
Nothing I said mattered. None of the evidence I brought forward mattered. The judge wouldn't even look at it. I mean, like literally wouldn't look at it. My ex said plain and clearly that there was nothing that I could do to get to see my kids. And the judge asked me what I wanted, and I said, I want you to find her in contempt of court. And the judge wouldn't do it. He said, that's the children's caretaker. And I said, what am I? And he goes, you're the financial support. I get a phone call from my ex. She said, your children want to see you. They want to be in your life. And I said, how soon can you come over?
When I first met my dad at 10, I remember pulling up in the car and he was like smiling like ear to ear.
My wife was elated. My other daughter was excited.
My dad took my sister Carola and I and Chelsea to go do like a family photo shoot thing. And I just remember feeling really happy because we were all together.
God, it was such a blessing.
It was actually a very good visit. We met at a park, so they were able to play on the toys and feed the geese.
I knew he was somehow family in one way or another, but it's like I didn't know him. It didn't really feel like a father-daughter thing because I didn't have that sort of connection with him.
I think I was 4. They got to come stay for a little bit. We used to play Polly Pockets together. He made me feel very secure about every issue I ever had growing up, wondering where he was. He got a tattoo on his back of my birthday, and I was informed by my mom and my stepdad that that tattoo got removed, and it hadn't. The visits with my dad ended kind of abruptly.
My ex said, you know, with what they take out of your checks for child support, I know that you struggle. And I would like to help with that. So I have an idea.
The last time that I remember seeing my dad, he was signing papers.
Ashlyn's crying, I'm crying, and I've got my kid's stepdad telling me, don't worry, I'll make sure she never takes your children away from you again.
By that point, Robert had been their dad for a few years. It just seemed like the next step.
I knew something big was gonna happen.
I've got her sitting there telling me, it's not gonna change anything. You're still their daddy, you're still their daddy. And the minute the papers were signed and the car doors were shut and everybody drove off, that was the last time I saw him.
The purpose of me meeting my father when I was 10 wasn't really about what I wanted from it or anything like that. It was just to get the adoption to go through.
I signed my rights. I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed, I hate myself every day for it.
It sometimes felt as if my parents wanted me to choose sides. Like, they'd be like, what do you think?
They basically left it up to us whether we wanted to see him or not.
To pick a parent at 5, I probably wouldn't know who to pick at all.
Where his knees are.
Oh, yeah.
That was Mom.
Where's Amy?
Wave, go wave.
I found out that Brian was adopted by Karen, I believe, through an email. Ooh, okay. I was angry and heartbroken.
This is that when you adopt somebody, everything about the person disappears and it all starts over.
I think she was like much more like making a bigger deal than I was. She was really excited and felt like she was like pretty nervous, or maybe a little nervous to ask me.
So on it says certificate of birth. Like, I gave birth to you on this day. That's how this is written. Like, it wipes everything else out before that, and now this is your legal document. So if anybody searched your birth, this is what they would see. They would see that I am now on your birth certificate as if I gave birth to you.
To me, Karen was mom, and it was important to her.
It's like that never happened, and this did.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to make
look
things
at
happen,
it.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I really didn't even think about Caroline at the time.
This is a card I sent to my daughter that I took a picture of so she would know that I sent it. And I did that with many cards that I sent them. This was a photo that was taken when she was little. Oh, God. All right. The adoption paperwork for Katie. I received an email from Karen saying that Katie wanted to be adopted also. By that point, she wasn't talking to me anymore, really. She didn't want anything to do with me. It says who we are and my consent to the adoption.
How do you feel when you read that?
Not good. My daughter testified on the stand and said that she didn't want to see me. And it was an open court. I watched the whole thing. I was sitting right across from her looking at her while it was happening.
As soon as society and the legal system starts to ask a child, who should you choose to live with? Who would you like to live with? Then right away, they are asking a child to make a choice about who's a better parent. And that means one parent gets to be a parent and the other gets to be, at best, a visitor, and at worst, completely erased.
Like, I would just say it's just easier to not talk to her, and it was just such an easy decision. And in reality, there's no way that a decision like that could have been easy. So in turn, that's how I started building my walls. They're like screw you walls, like no one's getting in here. As a kid, we just don't want the stress of having to figure all this out.
I think the parents a lot of times aren't even conscious of the conflict they're creating for the child or the way they're manipulating them. One of the concerns when you interview a child is they come into a stranger's office in an uncomfortable setting. They've been brought here by one or the other parent. The other one's sitting out there. They feel incredibly conflicted. And so I don't know that we get accurate information from children when they come in.
I just want to see my mom. Sophie, do you want to go see your daddy? Can you tell me why? Because I don't.
What I remember about being in court was having to lie to the judge.
I have one case that sticks in my mind where the child wrote me and told me that all of the things she had complained about in detail had all been a lie.
My stepdad was going to be my real dad now. I remember telling Mom something along the lines of, I don't feel this way about my stepdad. I don't want my stepdad to be my dad. And she told me that basically that it was too late to say that, and it was out of my hands at that point. I was scared, to be honest, so I lied. And I said, yeah, I'm okay with this. I'm comfortable with this. This is what I want. And I felt a lot of guilt for that for a long time. Like, it was my fault that I felt that way because I should just rewire my brain and think the way they think, which was that I shouldn't have a relationship with him. I started smoking when I was 12, cutting myself regularly. I don't recall any kind of follow-up or checkup. I was never talked to by a social worker or a psychologist on anything about it. I had a boyfriend. I had a talk with him one day about my situation with my father.
She just felt like she couldn't really talk about her father, Dizzy, around her mother and her stepfather. And I just gave her somebody in her corner to fight for her decision on whether or not she wanted to pursue it. The worst thing that could happen is, you never talk to him again, but the best case scenario is so much brighter than that,
I contacted Dad. I was on the phone with my dad for the first time since I was 10, and it was like the most crazy feeling. Then I found out that my mom and my stepdad started listening to our phone calls. I got into a very vicious argument, and I ended up getting kicked out.
She had called me and let me know that she was homeless. She was 14. And I have no legal right to drive up and pick her up. She's not my child according to the courts.
They came to pick me up, my stepdad and my mom, and basically told me that if I wanted to live in that house and have a happy family, I needed to cut ties with my real father. The family kind of changed after that. Things were different. People weren't really acknowledging me. People were treating me poorly. Yeah, I felt like I was the enemy in my own house.
About 60 or 70 of these interviews. Just like with domestic violence, people blame the victim. What did this parent do? They must be doing something to make this child not want to see them. It shows an ignorance of what human development is like and the power that a parent has in that child's life and how they perceive the world. This child has been brainwashed. They hate that parent, or they inherently don't trust them. They don't like them, and they don't have a good reason for it.
My dad had my brother snoop through my mom's paperwork.
And I got to the point where I resented going with my father. I would yell at him. I would say, I hate you. Why are you doing this?
It was always ingrained in me that my mom was the enemy and that I shouldn't want to see her.
And how much of a liar she was, and all these terrible things about her that I knew wasn't true.
What goes through the mind of a child trained to hate a parent? We talked to Candace, who was brave enough to come forward.
I became deeply fearful of my dad. Iranian culture is not exactly popular in the United States, and my mom showed me that film Not Without My Daughter.
We're not going back, we're staying here. I want us to live in Iran.
And told me this is what your dad's culture is. They're all kidnappers, they want to steal children and hurt women. She really wanted to erase our identity. It was really a very slow process of conditioning me into accepting statements that I otherwise would not have believed. My dad would go to hug me and I would reject him. And I confronted him every chance I got to scream and yell at him about why he was a bad person, why his culture was so bad, and rejecting everything that made him him. When I was at his house, when he would manage to get visitation, I would go through his papers. I knew what I needed to do when I was around his information, and that was to steal it and give it to my mom so she could get him fired and this and that. And that's what she would do. She would call these companies and make accusations pertaining to his national origin. That's one of the hardest things, because there was a lot of abuse in my house growing up with my mom, and those scars are there, but the scars of guilt are just as powerful. And I can't take it back. I can't get time back. And no matter how many times I tell myself or someone else tells me that there was nothing I could do,
that I was going to be powerless to this campaign of denigration, and thinking, I need to tell somebody. And the thought that would always stop me is, who's going to listen? They don't listen to my dad. He's an adult. Who's going to listen to a 10-year-old? And then what's going to happen to me? They're not going to give me to my dad. And I don't even know that I know him anymore. What if some of the stuff my mom says is true? What if I'm wrong? I'm just a kid.
After half a decade in family court, a drastic ruling. No contact between the father and any of the children until family therapy had been completed. As the courts often don't diagnose alienation, the judgment made the local papers, which published the entire 120-page ruling.
The ruling was made that he should enter a family reunification program and have temporary no communication with the father. I believe that the father had no intention on Brandon participating in the program. And so there were plans made for him to leave.
We get a phone call. He's in England.
After the ruling, Brandon ran away from home at age 16. His father claimed he didn't know where he was, but he was given money and a passport and resurfaced in a family friend's home in the UK, his father's birthplace.
He wanted all the orders dropped for him to be able to just go straight back to his dad's house. That would be the only way he would come back. I'm going to read the CAFCAS report from Child Protection Services in the UK. Brandon said nothing that helped in my understanding of what has caused the breakdown of his relationship with his mother. The judge in England decided that he could stay there and he would be made ward of the court and that she could not force him to get on the plane to come back.
What a stupid judge. Like, you basically just ruined my life.